Cool. Hopefully, if you're connected to the network, I just saw some people coming through. So if you want to test it out, this is just a really silly demo just to show that all this stuff does work. A lot of this is not production code. It's just, again, proof of concept, just saying that these two things can work together and can talk together. Cool. And then also just to show you, there's nothing up my sleeve here. Cores is turned off. That's what that little red guy. We'll talk about cores if you don't know. And there are WebSocket stuff, kind of hard to see, but trust me, this is all real. It's coming through WebSockets. It's not Ajax. It's all working the way I'm going to tell you it does. So, cool. So the talk is about Ember and Phoenix and putting them together and seeing how they work. Real quickly, just a little bit about me. My name's David Kormushoff. I go by Kormy pretty much everywhere on the internet except for Instagram, where it's an underscore because somebody stole my name and doesn't use it. I'm very accidentally technical. It kind of happened just because I fell into this. I got into Ruby first and really liked that after struggling with PHP as a programming language and hating it. From there, I just kind of had a bunch of guys that all the stuff they were saying made sense, which is why I got into Ember a couple years back, because Yehuda was doing great stuff with Merb and making Rails awesome. And all that stuff also brought me to Elixir. And I work for a company called Ambush Consulting. We do IT consulting. We do not have a typical stack. We do everything from web to hardware, embedded devices. Elixir is really exciting for that. There's a project called Nerves, which if you are interested in the Arduino and that kind of stuff, definitely check it out. They're doing some great stuff there. But we really like to work with the most technical people on any team that we're working with. We really believe that CTOs know best for their company, and we're just there to support teams and help in any way we can. So that's a little bit about us. I just went to Peru and met a bunch of llamas, so there's a couple llama references in this. But that's my new best friend. Okay, so why are we talking about these two things? First of all, Ember is awesome. I don't think I really have to convince anybody here about that. There's a lot of great stuff in it. Love the team that's behind it. Love the community, as we were just talking about. I think Ember CLI is one of the coolest pieces of technology out there. It makes your life so much easier. I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I think that the web's kind of a mess right now, and it's a real pain for people that don't spend their life in it. Ember CLI solves a lot of those problems. Glimmer is another amazing piece of technology, and I love some of the magic that comes with Ember. If I don't need to do anything special with the controller, I don't need to do anything with it. It's just there and does exactly what I need it to. Phoenix is awesome. Again, convention over configuration. The team behind it is incredible again. Jose and Chris McCord are both incredible. They're always in pull requests. They're always in the Slack channels. Some of the most helpful people out there. Chris's book on Phoenix is excellent, and you should definitely read it if you're interested in Phoenix. Erlang and Elixir, again, incredible. Plug. Plug is basically the way that requests get modified and handled as you go through a Phoenix app. I think it's really cool because it is a very simple interface. You can implement a plug in a method or in a module. It's really simple, and it makes it really easy to understand and logic about how a request goes through your web stack. Mix is kind of the Elixir version of kind of a package manager, kind of what Ember CLI does. Mix gives you all the generators in Phoenix. And I love it because there's no magic. So the magic that works in Ember, on the converse side, in Phoenix, everything is really easy to reason about. You can walk through your entire request and understand exactly how everything works. So a little bit of a weird transition here, but I want to talk right away about Phoenix views. If you're a Rails person, you know that views are more like what an Ember template is, but in the Phoenix world, a view is more of a cross between a decorator and a renderer. So a view really just they're just, your views are functions, just like anything else in your app. And then there are templates underneath all that. But if we wanted to just walk through a little bit of the code here, basically all this is doing is the first def name, you can pass a user to that. It will do pattern matching. So if you pass the entire user, it will find where the first name key and the last name key, and then line 6 through 8, you're just concatenating, and then the little pipe operator is just like a pipe in your Unix terminal, and it's passing the last thing out of that into the first argument of the next function. And then again, on the render side of things, this is really as simple as it is to render out just a JSON object. You are telling it the view, the object you're rendering, and then what you want to do with that. And again, you can use that name, just the same way you'd use a decorator in any other view. So I truly believe that we don't need any more front-end build tools. Joe Armstrong, if you don't know, was one of the creators of Erlang, and this is one of my favorite tweets because I felt this way more than once. Every time I use a grunt or a broccoli or a brunch or all the different tools, they all do things slightly different ways, and I always find them kind of confusing. The great thing about Ember is Ember CLI takes care of all of that for me. So when Phoenix came around, Chris really felt strongly that they didn't want to reinvent the wheel. They didn't want to create another asset pipeline. So Rails spends a lot of time making sure that the asset pipeline works the way it needs to in order to get your views looking right. And it's, in the Phoenix point of view, it's doing too much. So there's no asset pipeline to manage, both from the development side, which frees up resources, and then also from your side to figure out, how do I handle this when I'm deploying to Heroku? How do I do all this stuff? It really punts on that. And it comes with Brunch, but you can tell that they were trying to give you as many options to jump out as early as possible. So you can generate your Phoenix app, giving it the no brunch option, and basically what you get is models, controllers, your router, and the view objects, which allow you to render JSON and that kind of stuff. And then when you're generating a model, it will, again, you can just tell it, I just want this to be JSON. I don't want to worry about the templating. The templating will be handled elsewhere. And I think that's really great because there are better tools than just inventing another one. So here comes Ember. Ember lives in the front end. It does an amazing job. You can build incredible, audacious apps with it. Ember data, sort of great. It used to be a lot worse. I think it's pretty great today, but there are some complexities when you're integrating with Phoenix and some of the WebSocket APIs. And again, Ember CLI means I don't have to deal with build tools package managers. So when I first was going to give this talk, I thought it was going to be really technical, and I was going to be writing a lot of code, and you guys are going to see me live coding. And then as I kind of got into it, I realized that I don't know that that's really valuable to anybody. There are a million tutorials online that'll give you a better learning experience from that. There are great resources and podcasts and videos. But what I realized as I went through it was I started asking myself the question, does this make sense? Is this a stack that we should all be considering? What parts of it are good, what parts of it are bad, and what can we as a community improve on? So this talk will be very little code, if at all, after this point, but more about a discussion of how these two things integrate and does it make sense for us to use them. So first of all, there's been, obviously with Node and server-side JavaScript, some push towards making everything into one giant app that your app, you run the same code for running your server and for building your front end. But when we do apps, and my company spends quite a bit of time building iOS and Android apps, our app code doesn't live with the server. And it's a client just the same way that the web is. So I don't know that really makes sense. The issue that I think Rails runs into a lot of times that I mentioned before is it it has to keep up with the advancements on both the server side, the client side, everything JavaScript's doing with ES6. We're talking about service workers, action cable, all this stuff coming into Rails that it has to keep going all at the same time while maintaining an asset pipeline. There are some questionable things. Maybe you can scale these two things separately. It maybe allows for more team independence. Specialization in these frameworks is really good. And sometimes you just have a part of your app that's moving faster, and having those two things coupled together isn't always the best thing. So this is great, and we should just do this, but there are some problems, but they're not really that big. So some of the roadblocks that we run into immediately, if you're just trying to do the 15-minute, get my blog up and running, fast demo, this is not the stack for you. Just because it's not all integrated and it wasn't intended to be integrated. So we have cores, which is an issue, which basically is cores tells your browser whether or not you can accept requests from an outside source, right? So we all have issues with XHR. The JSON API creates some issues with the way that Phoenix handles things and the way that the JSON API serializers work in Ember. Just getting the Phoenix.js, which is what allows WebSockets, is a little bit of a hurdle, just because Ember doesn't have the tooling for it right now. And there is a lack of an existing adapter within the framework for WebSockets, which just creates, again, just another hurdle. So the first thing is security. Both frameworks are excellent at security. They really care about it. And so it just means that you're going to have to do a couple extra steps to make these two things communicate. It's really not that bad. Phoenix has a plug called Corsica, which, again, you're just passing a connection through your plugs as you go through the request process. And what Corsica does is it just adds some headers. It's a drop-in, it's one line, and it solves your problem. You just tell it what port or what host to point to, and cores is handled for you. So the JSON API has, there's some issues with Ember and Phoenix integrating with it because the way that Ember handles it, by default, Phoenix passes a root element of data, which Ember is not expecting when you're deserializing it, which is funny because if you actually look at the spec, Phoenix is doing it the way that the spec tells you to. But it's, again, really simple to solve this. There's a dependency you can add just called JSerializer. You add a plug again, and it handles your request, modifies it so that your JSON looks the way that Ember is looking for it to look. I think an important thing to look at anytime you look at a framework, a language, is the community and the tools you have around it. When it's 2 a.m. and something's not working and the clients are calling or your customers are calling, something's broken and you can't find an answer on Stack Overflow or nobody's ever done it before, that is a problem and it's something to be aware of. There are some tools coming forward that's getting better. One of the killer features that everybody points to with Phoenix, and I think it's incredible, is its handling of WebSockets. WebSockets channels are incredibly simple. They just come right built in. The JavaScript works exactly the way you want it to. But there are some considerations because there's no WebSocket adapter right out of the box. So I think that there are a lot of really great places that we can go here. There are two really incredible frameworks that allow you to get up to speed and get stuff built really, really quickly. But this is definitely not for to-do list apps. You need to have a really great business case for putting these two things together, especially if you're planning on building something with the WebSockets. WebSockets don't need to be everywhere, and just because we have the tools doesn't mean that they should be added to everything. They can create additional complexity, and just need to be aware of that. Yeah, again, ask yourself if you need the channels. One thing I did want to mention that's really coming down the pipeline soon in Phoenix is what's called presence. It's this really great thing that basically handles a really tough issue, which is knowing whether or not somebody's connected. It sounds simple, but a person can be disconnected, or you can be unable to reach a person for a lot of different reasons. And there's some really incredible computer science work that went behind this. You should read the papers if you're interested. It's really incredible what they've been able to do. I have some links if you do want to get this stuff going. It's really simple to get stuff set up. It's just a matter of taking the steps, taking the time, and going one by one and just making sure that everything lines up. You'll hit a lot of errors. You'll hit a lot of could not reach the server, 404, but it's just a matter of taking the steps one at a time. The docs for both frameworks are incredible again, and both of the Slack channels are equally great. So that's all I had for my general overview. But again, this is fun stuff, and I wanted to make sure if anybody had any more specific questions about the way it works, the way channels look. I have, again, really boilerplate code that we can kind of take a look at if anybody's interested. But again, I don't want to bore people with line-by-line code when maybe you just want to hop online and read a tutorial about, because it's really simple. You have a join, and you can send and handle messages. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
I'm really curious. We've done some Elixir here internally, mostly as a drop-in replacement for existing Rails
Yep.
APIs. But we haven't used it for WebSockets.
Yep.
What kind of issues have you run into in terms of kind of the interface between WebSockets and Ember data?
So again, one of the great things about Ember is it's very opinionated about the way things need to be handed down. And the way you need to pass things into the data store. And so it's a matter of finagling the way that because you're not, without just a built-in adapter, you're not just saying store.get all and passing it and so it's manual is really all that it comes down to.
So does that come down to essentially registering like a channel listener from the Ember side, and then as
Correct.
come in,
Correct.
pushing those manually?
Yep, and you can do things a bunch of different ways. So like you can initialize everything with just a traditional JSON request, right? And just do a get, pull everything in, and then listen for the new message or whatever you're broadcasting. So you join a channel, and then you can send messages, and then both the JavaScript side and the Phoenix side will listen for that. And so it's just a matter of listening for that. I think the big point I wanted to make is not that any individual thing is tough. It's if you're trying to say, I just want everything to be WebSockets right now because WebSockets are cool and Phoenix has channels and let's just go 100% in. And I think my point is take it step by step. Yeah.
So how have you found transitioning to Elixir? How are you liking just as a general functional programming style? How are you enjoying that?
So a couple things. I think I remember listening to Dave Thomas talk about it back when he first started getting into Elixir, which is kind of what got me into it because, hey, he's the guy that got to Ruby first. It takes a while, but then when your head clicks for it, it's the whole way of doing things makes a whole lot of sense. So, pattern matching, which I didn't. Trying to see if there's. No. So, I'm sure it's hard to see because I forgot to turn this off in black. But so on line 10, you have a handle in, right? And what that means is you have a message coming in, and it matches the pattern new : message, and you will handle all of your message sending the exact same way. And so it's just handle in the whole way down, or handle out. And that kind of stuff is a little, weird at first. And like back before when we were looking at the, on line 5 here, this pattern matching and then also setting variables, it's just, it's a functional thing, but it does take wrapping your mind around doing it with a language that looks like Ruby. But I really enjoy it. I now have found myself really trying to write Ruby code that looks more pattern matchy. Returning tuples, that kind of stuff gets really comfortable really quickly. A common pattern you'll see in Elixir is returning a 2-tuple with an atom or what would be a symbol in Ruby. You return a tuple that's OK, comma, your data, or error, comma, the error message. And being able to pattern match against that stuff and simplifying your case statements just gets really, really comfortable very quickly. And then you miss it when you're not using it anymore. Yeah.
Can you talk about a client project you use this on?
So nothing for Ember and Phoenix together, just because I think it's, you really need, again, I think you really need to have a really good reason to have a client that needs all of that. But as far as Phoenix goes, we've recently deployed a fairly major scale app handling check-ins through both Android and iPhone apps. It was crashing constantly. It was costing the company a lot of money. And now I think it's handling 100% of their client requests with more because they have more traffic now because people trust the service. And it's running, I think the Erlang VM has peaked at 100 megabytes at peak check-in time. So for a system that was crashing pretty consistently before, Phoenix has been a really, really great transition. And then also the fact that the Erlang VM does so well at handling different nodes in distributed systems, and your ability to just kind of scale horizontally is pretty great, and it makes our lives a lot easier.
What was the issue that you were having? You had mentioned there was an issue that you were having with the JSON API talking from Phoenix to Ember.
Yeah.
What was this? And I'm curious about a little
Yeah.
bit more detail.
Yeah, sure.
Specific issue, like what was Phoenix sending back that Ember didn't like?
Yeah, so really stupid. So when you use the JSON API, it's expecting you to send a root element which matches the model name of the object you're deserializing. And the actual spec for JSON API, which I think Yehuda is working on, specifies data. And so when you pass that back, it says, I can't find something called datum or data. And it's just, again, it's nothing that's more than a couple lines of code to fix, but it's one of those things that either you'll have to do every time, there has to be something written for it, or you're just going to run into that, like, why is this not working over and over again? Cool.